Join me today as we talk about another John Carpenter movie, this time The Fog. This is the Geek Cabal channel. My name is Bobbie, and today we're going to be talking about another 80s horror movie, this time John Carpenter's The Fog. Now, I should go ahead and tell you, if you look up this movie, there is a remake of this movie from sometime in the 2000s with Tom Welling, some other people. I mean, it's been a long time since I've seen it. I just saw it the one time in the theaters. I didn't particularly care for it. It's not that it's a terrible movie, but there's parts of it that's like, it just didn't do it for me. But yeah, so this one, however, I think is decent. This, like I said, it's from the 80s. Another John Carpenter movie. Um, let's see. I watched this one on Prime, so there'll be a link down there in the description in case you're interested in checking it out there. So I actually made a bunch of notes this time because I started to notice a bunch of things while I was watching the movie. First and foremost, before I really get into the plot, I should note that there are a number of people in this movie who are also in other John Carpenter movies or adjacent movies. Uh, so we have the weather guy whose name I didn't catch. He is the sheriff in Halloween. There's let's see, there's three guys on a boat at one point towards the beginning of the movie who all get it. One of them is the main homeless guy who ends up actually working with the aliens in They Live. It's another movie we need to talk about at some point in the near future. Janet Leigh from Psycho. Now, she's not in a John Carpenter movie, but she's in a John Carpenter adjacent movie because she's in Halloween H2O. And Janet Leigh also notably is Jamie Lee Curtis's mother. Now, they're not actually on screen at any point together in this movie, unlike in Halloween H2O where they are actually together. And there's also another callback to Psycho there where she's driving a car. It's either the same or very similar to the car that she drove in Psycho. Tom Atkins, who plays I think he's an investigator of some kind. He, maybe he's one of the police members. I don't know. Didn't quite catch it. He's in Halloween 3 as the main character. Then we have Hal Holbrook. Now, he's in all kinds of movies. But the big one I can think of off the top of my head is he's in The Firm. He's the guy who actually appears to actually run The Firm. He's the senior member of the team. Unless I'm mistaken, he's also in the movie Wall Street. He works for the trading house. It's not a trading house. What do you call it? Well, maybe it's also called a firm that Charlie Sheen's character works for, and he's the guy who's been there, seen all the ups and downs. And just before Charlie Sheen gets arrested, he gives him this speech about basically like knowing your limits and not going beyond them and stuff like that. But he's in all kinds of movies. I don't think he's in any of Carpenter's other movies. I just noticed he was in there. He says he's the priest in this movie. Nancy Keys, who is, I didn't catch who she's actually supposed to be in this movie. I mainly just noticed that I recognized her. She is Annie in Halloween. Jamie Lee Curtis's friend, the sheriff's daughter, gets killed by Michael Myers. Adrienne Barbeau, who's in numerous other movies, but as far as Carpenter is concerned, she's in Escape from New York. And then Jamie Lee Curtis is also in the movie as a hitchhiker working her way up the California coastline, and obviously she's in the Halloween movies. So, yeah, a bunch of other people from Carpenter's movies or their general orbit are in this movie. And that's why I started taking notes because it started to be like, hey, this person and this person's in it. It's been a long time since I've seen the movie, so I didn't remember, other than Adrienne Barbeau, I couldn't remember who all was actually in the movie. So, yeah. So what is the movie about? Killer Fog, as the name indicates. No, there's actually more to it. Before I proceed, I do just want to note, unlike the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, I do think children above a certain age, obviously not like a 5-year old, could easily watch this movie. There are only, I want to say, 5 deaths. Yeah, I think there's only 5 people get killed. It's largely bloodless. They are mostly stabbed, but a bunch of gore and viscera spraying everywhere. And unless I'm forgetting something, with Jamie Lee Curtis and Tom Atkins being intimate, and I don't think I am, then there's no nudity. So, yeah, I mean, kids above a certain age could watch this movie. It's largely bloodless. There's not really any real scares in it. And, yeah, you know, so just throwing that out there. So, on to the movie itself and the plot. We're in the town of Antonio Bay in California. And, lives in California. So, it's a coastal town, and Adrienne Barbeau's character is a radio DJ who works out of a lighthouse, and the guy who's the sheriff from Halloween is a weather broadcaster, and essentially the town is getting ready to celebrate their centennial, or at least I think it's the centennial for the town, but it might have been for something important in the town, and the as it's drawing closer, we have an incident where all the like a bunch of electronics and stuff in town start going crazy at I think it's just after midnight, and like just a bunch of things just start going off. But in the church where Hal Holbrook is, like a stone pops out of one of the walls, and he finds a diary in there, and he reads it and realizes that the town founders uh, were presented with a situation where there were people on a ship offshore who were had leprosy, I want to say, and I'd have to double check that. I think it was leprosy, but I suppose it could have been the plague. And anyway, it's a disease no one else wants. Is the point here? And so they wanted to set up someplace else on shore, away from the town, and just wanted to be there in peace. So they wanted to come to the town and explain what they're getting ready to do, and I think they're even willing to pay. And the town elders were like, "How about we kind of agree with that, and then we'll sail out there and kill everyone and take their stuff, because who's going to miss a ship full of diseased people and they're all weak? So let's go for it." And so they do. They kill them all and take their gold. Now, one of the conspirators was the town priest, who then stole the gold from everyone else, melted it down, and made it into a giant golden cross, which he then proceeded to bury inside of a wall along with his diary and everything else. So they, the ghosts of the people that they killed and their ghost ship are now back for revenge, and they're in the fog. So they're coming to the town. They want their pound of flesh. They want to kill 6 people because that's how many people rode out and took them out. So they want their revenge. They're not too concerned with which 6, apparently, because they killed these 3 guys on a fishing boat at the very beginning. And again, it's bloodless violence, more or less. Um, and before we know what's happening, you kind of suspect these people are like ghost pirates or something. And not to get into the, the the metaphysical debate from South Park, which if you've ever seen, I think it was their first Halloween episode, or it's somewhere in the first few seasons. They have a Halloween episode where the band Korn is there, and people are being killed by ghost pirates, and they have a moment where they're standing back like, well, are they ghost pirates or are they pirate ghosts? Someone is like, well, what's the difference? Like, well, one, a ghost pirate is trying to make sure I get this argument right here. I believe a ghost pirate is the ghost of a pirate. So they were a pirate in life, died, now they're a ghost. Whereas a pirate ghost is someone who died, became a ghost, then decided to become a pirate. And like that doesn't, that doesn't matter at all for that particular episode or for this movie. But it's one of those like, well, I guess it does kind of matter which one you call them. So, again, just a little diversion there. So they show up, kill those guys, and we see the fog from the perspective of Adrienne Barbeau there at the lighthouse. And the fog is shifting one direction, but the wind is blowing the other, which shouldn't happen because the fog should go whichever way the wind is blowing. And so, her and the weather guy kind of baffled by this. Then people start getting ready for the centennial. Some other events occur. Adrienne Barbeau's son finds a plank of wood that's got part of the name of something on the beach. Tom Atkins picks up Jamie Lee Curtis as she's hitchhiking, and they have an interesting exchange where she's like, "You're not a weirdo, are you?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm real weird." She's like, "Oh, thank God," because she knows that he's joking, and she's like, the last guy, by the time we got to wherever, he was ready to propose to me, and I don't know if Tom Atkins was willing to go that far, but it's apparent that they slept together. So then one of the ghost pirates begins like knocking on his door, but then it's like 1 a.m. or something, and the fog dissipates. He's gone, and so we get strange occurrences around town for a little bit, and the movie progresses over a very short time frame. It's a couple days, but it's not very long, and once like things begin happening and people kind of begin to piece together like that there's things in the fog and that it's bad and we should avoid it, it accelerates pretty rapidly from there. It's obvious that the guys in the fog are like, they're in the end game. They want their revenge, and so they the few characters we care about kind of wind up at the church. The preacher lays it all out for them, and then all the ghost pirates are trying to get inside, and then he digs out the gold cross from the wall. Now I want to be clear, whenever I say a gold cross, I mean like, the cross beams of the cross are about this wide and the cross is about that thick. So essentially imagine taking a bunch of gold bars, gold bars, which weigh approximately 20 pounds each, last I understood. Imagine laying them out in the shape of a cross that is about 3 feet tall, and then, filling in gold to solidify it. And you'd have a cross that probably weighs, by my guesstimate, 160 pounds at least. Hal Holbrook is an old man, even back in the 80s. And he just kind of picks it up and walks out with it. And I'm just like, no, that cross would weigh far too much for Hal Holbrook and his frail frame to pick up. But he does, and he goes and he gives it to the ghost pirates. That seems to satisfy them. They leave, the fog disembarks. Adrienne Barbeau kind of warns everyone. And yeah. And in between all this, the weatherman and the woman watching Adrienne Barbeau's son get killed which brings our death toll up to 5. There are 5 people that die in this movie. And then the ghost pirates seem to be satisfied. Everything seems to be going on. Then we see a little bit of fog rolling underneath the door in the church. Then they materialize again, and one of them probably decapitates the priest. So there's probably 6 people that die. And then that's the movie. So it's not overly scary. I mean, Carpenter illustrates that you can give him probably any premise and basically no budget, and he'll deliver you a movie. It's really sold on the fact of who's in the movie versus the plot itself. One little side note I should have mentioned earlier: John Carpenter has a band called the Coupe de Villes, and they do the music for some of his movies. And one of the first songs that Adrienne Barbeau's character plays on the radio is by a band called the Coupe de Villes, which I assume was actually Carpenter and his band performing the music. Or that's where he just got the name. So, Carpenter's also apparently in the movie somewhere as an uncredited extra. I didn't catch him, and I'll have to wait till the next time we watch the movie to try to look for him. Deborah Hill, who produced most of his movies, and I don't know if they were romantically involved or not. For some reason, I was thinking they were, but she's in the movie somewhere as an uncredited extra also. So, it's worth checking out if you like John Carpenter's movies. Like I said, it's not really scary. I mean, that's an odd bar to have because most horror movies aren't scary. If you're over the age of 13, so they're just not. That's not why you watch them. You do get the occasional jump scare, like Sarah, for instance, very susceptible to the jump scare, as because we happen to be watching Friday the 13th Part 2 over the weekend, and actually managed to watch it a couple times. There's a whole story there that I'm not going to go into, but yeah, and there's definitely a couple parts where like she even knew it was coming and jumped. So hey, that's the thing. Every once in a great while, the jump scares get me too. They get me in the theater, that's for sure. And it's not always the jump scares. Like whenever I watch Kill Bill, the very beginning of the movie. By the way, this is a spoiler alert for the first 2 minutes of the movie, so you've been warned. Whenever Uma Thurman gets shot in the head, like just the sudden bang as she's like mid sentence, caused me to, jump around a bit, and so I mean, even I'm susceptible to it. So, it happens. I don't even know if there'd be anything in this movie that would cause her to jump. I mean, nothing I can think of. All the deaths, like, except for maybe the first 1 or 2 on the boat, since you don't know what's happening yet. But after that, I mean, they're all telegraphed a mile away. So, I mean, overall, like, I hate to criticize a film creator who I actually like admire as far as their body of work, and so I'm not going to criticize them, but this one's on the lesser end. Like for someone that made iconic movies like Halloween, The Thing, Escape from New York, like for the person that made those movies, this is a lesser entry. For a lot of other directors, this would be perfectly acceptable. And I'm not saying it's unacceptable from Carpenter. Because I mean, it doesn't hit out of the park every time. Like I think Escape from LA is kind of silly. It's definitely not as serious in tone as Escape from New York. And for that reason, it doesn't quite work as well. And it has that problem of being in like that weird spot in the 90s where CGI just wasn't quite there yet. And so it doesn't quite work. And it's not one of those movies that was really fortunate where they still had a lot of practical effects and just used CGI sparingly. And so the movies still look good today. So yeah, or where they spent a lot of money on special effects, like say Independence Day. So it kind of suffers a little bit because of that. But yeah, otherwise, but this movie, I mean, all the effects are good because I mean, it's essentially you got a fog machine handy, and occasionally running the fog sequences in reverse. Uh, this effects are actually probably really cheap and easy to do. You don't get to see a whole lot of the ghost pirates, so we get enough to know that like they're probably like really messed up, but we only get to see a handful of them. That's mainly towards the end of the movie. Uh, so like effects wise, there wasn't really a whole lot to do here. You know, and again, they're mostly not gory deaths. So, uh, soundtrack is there was nothing I'd say memorable about it because I can't recall any of the music from the movie off the top of my head. There's no Halloween theme that you're gonna remember forever. Uh, there's no Don't Fear the Reaper on the background in the radio in Halloween. There's no subtlety to the Thing soundtrack that you'll remember whenever you hear it again at the end of the prequel. Um, there's no Halloween. Even Halloween 3 had a more memorable soundtrack. I can still remember parts of it. But yeah, so this is it's totally acceptable, but I'm not going to say this is Carpenter's finest hour. Um, I definitely prefer Halloween or The Thing or They Live or Prince of Darkness or Escape from New York or maybe even Ghosts of Mars. Um, Trying to think of what else he made. Yeah, anyway. I'm not going to sit here and stare in the camera and pontificate whenever it's not going to help. So, uh, overall, like if you like Carpenter's other movies, it's a decent movie. I don't want to sound like I'm trying to trash the movie because I'm not. It's competent. It just his other movies are just they're just more memorable and more iconic. So, yeah, that's basically where I fall. I would say overall, probably a six, 6.5. Again, it's competent, but it's nothing to write home about. I would give the Thing like 9.5. Same with the first Halloween. Halloween's possibly my favorite horror movie, so I'm very biased in that. But an Escape from New York, that's 8.5, 9. It's up there. Whereas Escape from LA is, it's probably more like 5.5 to a 6. It's been a while since I've seen Ghost of Mars, so I hate to throw that out there, but I know that I know it's more like a down the like 6, maybe 7 range. They Live is probably up there in like the 8.5, but it's been a while since I've seen that too. So I don't want to say that and then rewatch it and realize that there's like some parts I just didn't care for or something. So anyway, like I said, probably 6.5. Solid watch. The remake, not good in my opinion, but I only saw it the one time when I was in theaters. Based purely off my memory of that, I'd probably give it like a 5. Uh, but again, haven't seen it in a while. I just thought the ending was dumb, and that probably really colored my view of the rest of the movie. And yeah, nothing against Tom Welling. I thought he did great as Clark Kent in Smallville. And I hear they're making like a follow up that I think is going to be animated. So I hear, and I know him and Michael Rosenbaum are back, and I think uh, Erica Durance, I think was her name, played Lois. I think she's back. So, and I liked her as Lois, you know. So I hope that works out. I'd rather see him in live action personally, but if it's got to be animated, so be it. They were all good actors for those roles. I mean, Michael Rosenbaum basically was Lex Luthor. So, but yeah, total sidetrack there. But yeah, it's like I said, it's worth checking out, especially if you like Carpenter's other movies. Want to see a whole bunch of stars you recognize from other movies. And it's kid friendly enough that most kids could probably watch it. I'm talking like, you know, 11, 12-year olds here, not like 5-year olds. This is essentially like the Tremors of John Carpenter's work on that front. Tremors, which is a horror movie, but like everyone was kind of in on the joke. There's only one or two deaths that are even remotely bloody, and there's enough humor. It's the if you want to introduce your kids to horror movies, like That's the comedy side. This is probably the less comedy side that I would attempt. This is one I'd attempt to use. Uh, if they can handle those, then I'd consider moving on to Halloween, but only part one. Things escalate quickly after part one. So, anyway, actually, I should do a whole video just on that. I will do that. Maybe I'll get Levi. If you've seen my other videos, he's my nephew, and his mom has let him watch a number of horror movies. He and I have watched a few together, so he seems to like horror movies. You know, I watched plenty of them at that point, so then I turned out to be not a psycho. So, anyway, yeah, so yeah, I'll try to get him on here sometime, but obviously won't be filming in the car for that one. So I want to do that. Have to figure out where I can film in the house. But anyway, we'll figure that out later. Let me know what you guys think. Have you seen the movie? Did you see the sequel? Not sequel. Did you see the remake? Where do you think the two compare to each other? If you've seen them both, uh, do you think the movie's suitable for younger people? Again, not like 5-year olds, but like 10, 12, somewhere in there. Um, where do you fall on other John Carpenter movies? Um, Probably going to go through a couple more of them before the end of the month. This being, October now. We're going to be hitting the horror movies pretty hard, especially since horror is my favorite genre. And we're not going to stop at the end of October, but that's definitely going to be the focus here during October. And I can almost guarantee that before the end of the month, I will be getting to Prince of Darkness. So, and I've already done a whole series on Halloween, and I'll link that up above here somewhere. Actually, I'll probably just link. Well, yeah, I'll do something. They'll be there. It'll either be that or just the whole John Carpenter playlist, but probably the Halloween movies. So, anyway, thank you folks for watching. Like, share, subscribe. Sharing and commenting are the two that help us grow the channel. If you feel so inclined, we always appreciate it. But otherwise, just stay safe out there and watch out for that fog.